Hi guys, my name is Lacey Brown and I'm going to do an overview of Autry Mill Middle School's data for the past few years. We're going to look at the Georgia milestones and also some demographic data. So the purpose for this data overview is to review the demographic data trends over the past 3 years at Autry Mill. We're going to compare student achievement at Autry Mill Middle School to the state's data and Fulton County's data. We're also going to look at just an overview of student achievement at Autry Mill in all 3 grade levels for math and the ELA milestones. And then we're going to specifically look closely at the 6th grade math scores over the past few years and look closely at some subgroups to see if we can determine some areas of growth and improvement. This presentation is not only for administration, especially because we're doing the overview, but it's also for the 6th grade math PLC because we are going to really look closely at the subgroups and where there may be some struggling students. So some guiding questions as we're going through this, I want you to think about what are strengths and weaknesses you notice, what changes can be made by the 6th grade math team teachers to increase student achievement, and then also what subgroups need the most support going forward. All right, so this overview is going to be last year, and then we're going to skip a year because of COVID, so we didn't take the milestones for a year. And then we're going to look at the 2 years prior to that. So there's a little gap, but we just don't have data for that 1 year because of COVID. So this specifically is the total enrollment data. And if you notice, I did pull more data than just the 3 years I spoke about. I wanted to go back a little bit further so you could kind of see a trend. And enrollment has decreased over the past few years. And that could be for a number of reasons. I think primarily it could be because of COVID and that shift to virtual learning. So a lot of the students that we had in person have since chosen to just do online learning. So I think that could be a decrease in the total enrollment at Autry Mill Middle School. So here specifically, we're looking at the breakdown of race categories at Autry Mill. You notice we are primarily white, but we do have a high Asian population as well, which is increasing, and it has increased over the last few years. Here is the breakdown by gender. We're pretty evenly split when it comes to gender. You can just definitely see the decrease in enrollment here in our numbers, but we are split pretty evenly male versus female. Here we're looking at demographic data, specifically subgroup data. We're looking at the economically disadvantaged students, limited English proficiency. It also includes the non-economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, and then students without disabilities. So low amount of economically disadvantaged students. We don't have very many of them at Autry Mill, and it has also decreased over the past few years. But our limited English proficiency, so our ESOL students, has increased over the years, starting at 112 students to more recently 130 students. So here's some teacher data, kind of shifting away from student data for a moment just to look at the breakdown of teachers. So we are predominantly a female staff with a large part of our staff having more than 10 years of teaching experience. Most of the teachers at our school are white, but the second highest race is Black teachers. Now that we kind of have an overview of the students at our school and the teachers at our school, we're going to now look at student achievement data and how it compares to the state, the county. So here is a comparison of how we've done in the subjects math and ELA. Autry Mill is the light colored bar, and then the Fulton County is the darker, and the state is blue. So you can tell that Autry Mill has consistently done better on milestones than the state and the county for the past few years. You can see overall, though, that Autry Mill and the state's scores have dipped in that 2020 to 2021 school year. This is more than likely due to the COVID pandemic. Interesting enough, though, the county's scores, so Fulton County scores, did not decrease from the 18-19 school year to the 2020 2021 school year. Theirs actually stayed consistent, but the Autry Mill and the state did dip in those few years. So now we're going to specifically look at student achievement data by grade and subject. We're really just going to focus on math here, but 6th and 7th grade and 8th grade math's breakdown of proficiency levels is what we're going to look at. This is just the 6th grade math data over the past few years, and you can see that 6th grade math has shown a slight increase in beginning learners, and there is also a pretty large increase in the number of developing learners with an increase of 9%. The number of students that were at or above proficient decreased in the last 2 years from 81% to 69%. And this decrease may also, again, be due to the pandemic. Just the level of proficiency, possibly could have dipped because of gaps in learning or whatever may have happened during the pandemic. This is 7th grade's math data, and 7th grade has held their scores pretty consistently. COVID or not, they've really done a pretty good job of keeping their scores where they were before. They did show a very slight decrease in the most recent years, but only a few percentage points. They had the highest percentage in the distinguished category across all 3 years. And then here is 8th grade math data, and you can notice they've really flattened their data in the most recent years. Their proficient learners went down by almost 20%, but their distinguished learners increased by about 7%. They also showed an increase in their beginning learners by 12%. So now that we've kind of had an overview of each of the grade levels math scores, we're going to look now at 6th grade math student breakdown. Really look more at like the subgroups and how they're performing compared to one another. So this is a closer breakdown of 6th grade math's subgroups when it comes to race, so Asian, Black, White, 2 or more races, or Hispanic. If you notice, the Asian population scored 55% scored distinguished, so they definitely had the highest amount of students scored in that distinguished category. While they're one of our higher achieving groups in 6th grade. Our Black students have the highest beginning learners at 21%, so they definitely are one of our bigger struggling groups. In addition, Hispanic learners have the highest in that developing learners category at 42%. So on this slide, we're taking a look at some other subgroups, and I broke them down by learning level. So if you notice, students with disabilities is the largest subgroup to score as beginning learners at 37%. So that's pretty high. They are in the lowest category there, and they definitely kind of stick out as the group that is in that lowest category. And economically disadvantaged students are the highest for our developing learners. So they also are struggling. They're at 44% in that developing learners category. Last slide, I really wanted to hone in a little bit more on the students with disabilities since they were in the highest in that beginning learners category. So here I did a close comparison of students with disabilities versus students without disabilities, and you can clearly see the discrepancy in the shift. The majority of students without disabilities are scoring at or above proficiency, while the majority of students without disabilities are scoring below proficient. So there's definitely a very clear picture here. Our students with disabilities, the scores, as the level goes up, their number is going down, in students without disabilities, as the level goes up, the score is going higher. So more of them are scoring at a higher level. So from all the things that we've looked at, there's definitely some strengths and there's some weaknesses overall. So just to kind of highlight some of the things we looked at, Autry-Mill is consistently scoring higher than the state and Fulton County on both the math and ELA Georgia milestones. So they really have kind of kept up that consistency of scoring better than the other two. And while there has been a shift in achievement due to COVID-19, the majority of our students are still testing at or above proficient, which I would say is a strength. And then specifically looking at our different grade levels, over the past 3 years, 7th grade has had the most students in that distinguished category, and they've really kind of kept their scores consistent over the past 3 years. While 8th grade has shown an increase in their percentages of distinguished students over the past 3 years. So even though their graphs were kind of flattening towards the end, they did show a very big increase in distinguished learners. So what are our areas of growth that we talked about? 8th grade math has shown a decrease in students that are at or above proficiency in the last 3 years. 6th grade math, the percentages of students who were at or above proficiency has decreased from 81% to 69%. 31% of students with disabilities scored as beginning learners in the most recent Georgia milestones for 6th grade math. And 26% of Black students scored as beginning learners on the most recent Georgia milestones for 6th grade math. So what are our next steps? There's definitely some things that we need to think about, and some we know kind of where we need to grow, so we need to consider what we need to do to make that growth happen. So what are some supports that can be provided to support 6th grade math's most struggling students, the students with disabilities and our Black students? What are ways that we can use data in the classroom to increase student achievement scores and really use data to determine where those gaps are in their learning? What are some resources we need to invest in to increase student achievement? And then what are ways that we can increase rigor in our classrooms to better prepare our students for the Georgia milestones? These are all questions that I think we need to discuss further and come up with an action plan to make those things happen. Thank you.